Hey, what's going on, people? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to Wild and Live. We are streaming with Ben Harris. Ben, can you give us a couple of words and see if we can hear you?
What's up, Patrick?
Well, what is up is that we are having a couple of technical issues. So I'm just going to see if this is actually working. Hopefully it is. If you could give it a little try on your side as well, we can hopefully check that your wonderful voice is streaming live to everybody. For anybody that's listening, if you can hear Ben, please let us know. Ben, what you're a filmmaker. What is it about filmmaking that most excites you?
Most excites me
Yeah.
is actually the thing that I got into filmmaking for. Is when I was doing my undergraduate in zoology, I found that I was really excited about telling people about the science that I was learning, and not necessarily that excited about actually doing the science. Um, and so it made sense to go into a communication job, really. And I was always playing with cameras anyway, so filmmaking was like a natural progression.
Are you basically saying that you're really lazy? That's why you decided to become a filmmaker?
Yeah,
I was expecting you to say no,
which is
because I'm really
actually
passionate about telling stories.
yeah, it's the wrong reason to do it because you can't be lazy at all because you need to get up at 4 in the morning and like have no sleep. So
Yeah. So Ben, success. Apparently, all our resetting, Control Alt Delete has now we can see you and we can hear you, which is great. Thank you, Janine and Kaylin, and also for Matteo for letting us know that you can hear Ben loud and clear. So, for those of you that are new to this channel, to this show, we're basically telling stories of animal encounters around the world. And today on Wild and Live, we've got Ben Harris, a wildlife filmmaker, adventure filmmaker, and a good friend of mine. We've been on a few different trips together, and today we're going to be talking about Ben, your experience filming um, real life unicorns.
real life unicorns.
Yeah. So over to you. What can you tell everybody what we're actually talking about and why that um, trip was so special to you?
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about filming probably one of the most endangered subspecies on the planet, which is the northern white rhino. There's only two of them left in existence, and last year in 2019, Patrick and I went out to Kenya to do a little bit of filming with these two animals. And there's honestly so many reasons why this trip was special to me. The first one was like obviously filming these animals is just an incredible like I don't know, it feels quite I don't know honor sounds like a big word, but it was really an honor and especially for me
Yeah.
all the people surrounding them and looking after them and who dedicated their lives to this to the kind of protection and conservation of this animal was really amazing. And it's one of the things that I really still enjoy about this line of work is getting to meet the people who are so passionate about um, looking after these animals. And then outside of that, it was actually it was I think it was the second trip that we went on, I think, or the third, but the second international trip, and it was the first after I'd like declared going freelance and being a pro, and it was nice to go out with Patrick to Kenya and have that as like a milestone first shoot that we went on together, um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it kind of kickstarted my entire year after that, which was cool.
So we know that. So you're out there. You were out there filming northern white rhinos. There are five different species. We were talking about this in one of my earlier videos. There are five different species: the Javan, the Sumatran, Indian, and then the black and white rhino. What is it? Can you tell us why uh, the northern white rhino stands out so much in comparison to those other four? I think you might have touched on it anyway, but it comes down to their rarity, I suppose.
Yeah. So it's northern white rhino is a subspecies of the white rhino. So they've got the southern white and the northern white. And due to like loads and loads and loads of factors, like a big one is civil war, and then there's obviously poaching for the horns, and a few conflict reasons. The northern white rhino has been hunted and poached and slowly died out until there's only two individuals of the species left on the planet. And so it does make it quite unique, not even in rhinos, but across any kind of species where we have and we know where the last two species of the two individuals of this subspecies are.
Yeah. And so we were filming those rhinos at the Arpeggiata Conservancy. That's where those two rhinos live, and that's where they're protected. They're in a protected boma, a protected enclosure. Ben, what was that like the first time you stepped into that boma? We got out of the game vehicle, and and we saw three rhinos, because they have one southern white rhino in there with the other two females, with Narjan and Fatu. Yeah. What was, because despite their size, they are the biggest rhino species, and despite their size, they can run at up to 40 kilometers an hour. So they're really light on their feet. I have a feeling that you had a couple of close encounters of your own.
Yeah. Well, bearing in mind up until this point as well, I'd been to kind of sub-Saharan Africa once on a university field trip, so that was very tame. Like, we did a few game drives and saw things from afar, but no real close encounters. And then we'd been in Kenya, I think, for at that point half a day or something. Like, we'd literally got to the conservancy and gone straight to bed, and then got up, and the very next morning we were like dropped in the middle of this boma with these three rhinos wandering around. And I had never, I mean, up until then, I think a horse or a cow had been like the biggest animal I'd been next to, and those things are like very used to people, and don't have a huge sword on their face. And so being in this boma with animals that had not been bred to be domesticated was very nerve-wracking. And not only are they fast in a straight line, they are very agile and can turn very quickly. So they're really closely related to horses, and they basically move in the same way as a horse does, despite being 2 to 3 times, 4 times as heavy.
Yeah, they kind of gallop. I describe them as like almost like ballerinas, or they have this kind of balletic type of movement.
Balletic is a great word. But yes, they do. They absolutely do. There's one point where I was trying to get really low angle shots of them because that's a great way to make your pictures look better, is to get really low and on the eye line of the animal. And so I was lying on my belly in front of this rhino, and a little hare jumps out of a clump of grass right next to it, and it basically freaked out and skipped to the side, and I also then freaked out, but I was frozen on my belly and didn't really know what to do, which that was terrifying. But it's a very, very surreal experience being stood next to something that's so foreign to us in the UK, and also absolutely massive.
Yeah, they are such alien creatures in some ways, but many of us identify with them because they are so beautiful and they are incredibly rare. And you touch on their size. Like, I've made some notes here. Male white rhinos can grow up to 1.8 meters tall, weigh up to 2,500 kilograms. So that's 2.5 tons, which is basically the same weight as 30 people. But what's interesting is that they're sustaining that huge bulk by eating vegetation.
Yeah,
and in some ways, I want to drop a nice little fact in here, or I want to ask you. I think you know this. That has a link to why they're called white rhinos, because white rhinos and black rhinos are basically grayish.
Yeah.
So can you tell us, Ben, do you know why the white rhino is called the white rhino?
The white rhino, isn't it? I think it's a mistranslation, isn't it? Or maybe I'm thinking of different.
You're close. Keep on going.
I know the difference between the two. I can't remember.
So it comes down to, like, you're right. It comes down to the translation of the Dutch and Afrikaans word meaning for wide, which is white, WEIT, white, and it has to do with their lips. So I think can you finish that train of thought for us?
Yeah, so it's about what they eat, right? So white rhinos and black rhinos are two different species, and so they live in two different environments, and they eat two different types of vegetation. And so the white rhino has a square lip, and it's because it grazes from the floor, and the black rhino has a hooked lip, so it's a browser, and it eats things that are that grow a little bit and are more off the floor. So it needs a bit more of a prehensile lip to kind of find its way through the thorns and pick out the good bits of vegetation and snap sticks off and stuff. Whereas the white rhino is mainly focused on eating grass and lower growing plants.
Yeah, grazing on grass on the savannah, and because of that, they're also known as they're a keystone species because they have this profound effect on the savannah around them. They I guess you could call them what, landscape architects. They're kind of landscape. They have an effect on the actual savannah itself. And I remember there was this one point we were sitting down, we were filming, and we came across these dung middens. Do you remember?
I distinctly remember. From Patrick's direction to Ben, get on your belly and lie right next to that piece of poo with your macro lens. And I was like, okay, Patrick.
So can you tell us, why were you lying down next to a huge pile of rhino?
I think I was actually on the pile of poo at one point. But basically even their poo is part of the ecosystem, right? So they eat all this stuff and they crunch it up and it becomes fertilizer, and then the fertilizer gets distributed by dung beetles and then other insects as well.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about that process or that ecological process, that food cascade. And these rhinos are eating huge amounts of vegetation and then pooping it all out. But then that's a great home for invertebrates, from termites, spiders, like you said, dung beetles, and all those invertebrates then go on to feed the next trophic level. So the next level of animals, be it small reptiles, lizards, birds that feed on those invertebrates. Yeah. So it's you might not realize it might not be immediately apparent to many people, but these rhinos play an incredibly important role in shaping the landscape. We were also there to tell the story not only of the rhinos, but of those that protect the rhinos. What was really for me? I think it was the same with you. I was stunned to learn that over the last 10 years, we've had at least one ranger die every 2 weeks. What was your feeling at meeting some of these rangers?
Well, I mean, it was quite surreal meeting people up until that point. I'd never met a wildlife ranger, really. I don't think, at least in Africa. They look very different from our countryside rangers, who are mainly communicators. I mean, I think we have subsections of the police here in the UK who look after rural crime, but out in Africa, it's a very different way of working. And even though they're part of the police, they're specifically there to like protect these animals, which involves almost an army level of. Well, it is an army level of training. Like they train together every day. We did a workout with them, which was difficult for a number of reasons. One, that it was a tough workout, and two, that we were at a different elevation to what we were used to. So doubly difficult. Yeah. And then they're also carrying around weapons and doing training exercises and being deployed into the bush for an entire week. And so these are like some incredibly hardcore individuals. And I was just amazed at the fact that they were so dedicated to what was going on, to kind of commit their entire life to living this way. Like, it's a lifestyle choice, really, rather than a job.
Yeah. And it's the reason why these rangers are like this. They are a protective army for these rhinos. And that's because the rhinos are being poached. I think, again, another startling fact was at least one rhino has been poached every single day. And there is at least one rhino poached every day, which is, when you start looking at this, I think it's even more when you start looking at the stats and seeing those numbers pile up, really doesn't bode well for the survival of those animals. But those rangers are there for a purpose. That's why they're there. We've got to meet someone called James Mwenda.
James.
What was your impression of James, and how do you feel that he what was your
I
impression?
I love. We've actually become quite good friends, James and I. And I guess I know you and James as well have been chatting a lot. But we, what was my impression of him? He was very, as a person, he's quite a calm and relaxed presence, and he's very passionate. Like, I know he's wanted to do the job that he does as a conservationist since he was a little kid, and so he's kind of living his dream, really, which is awesome. But he's just so passionate, and he speaks. He's a very poetic speaker as well. Like, he sees a lot of deep meaning in everything that's going on around him, and he's made a real connection with these animals, and they're basically, he calls them his girlfriends.
He does,
Yeah,
doesn't
which is
he?
brilliant, I think. And so he's like got a proper relationship with him, and what I love about meeting people who work so closely with animals, there's like seeing an animal in the wild is a real, like, an incredible experience, and watching it just behave completely naturally is, you can't really get anything close to that. But one of the really cool things about meeting conservationists who work with captive animals is that they can really tell you how different animals have different personalities, and I think it's something that I know before I got into this line of work and before I started studying animals, I would definitely both overlook and not really believe that animals were that. I don't know. I knew that they were sentient, but I didn't kind of know how much personality they could have. And the way that James talks about these three different rhinos is amazing, because they're all completely different characters.
And it's something that we were able to see whilst we were out there. I'd like to move on slightly, still staying on the topic of rangers, but thinking about the different ways that the rangers are able to protect those two rhinos and the greater population of rhinos in that particular location that we were, which is Old Pegerter Conservancy, Kenya. You spent some time with rangers that were tracking rhinos. So this was not with the KPR, just like monitoring
Yeah.
rhinos. Can you explain some of the precautions that you took in order to get close to rhinos outside of the Boma?
The precautions that I took were listening to everything I was told.
Well, I suppose what I mean is that rhinos have very poor
Yeah,
eyesight, but they got great
yeah,
hearing and a great sense of smell. Like, one of the I remember distinctively one of the first things I learned about trying to spot rhinos was that you've got to look for big rocks with moving ears.
yeah. It's surprisingly difficult to spot as well if you're not paying lots and lots of attention. They can be quite hard to spot, because they do just look like a big rock. But when walking through the bush in Africa, again, is a very different experience to what you get when you grow up in the UK or in uh, other countries where you don't have massive animals or very high abundance of them. Because I've no inbuilt fear about walking through the countryside whatsoever, whereas the guys that we're with are obviously being very cautious, and there's a number of things that they do to to kind of make sure that you don't bump into a rhino or a buffalo or a lion or anything like that. And the first one is just to make noise all the time, and so you're not
Yeah.
surprising anything, because that's probably the thing you could do, is turn around the like pass a large piece of vegetation and then just be face to face with a buffalo. That it doesn't particularly end well for anybody. But the so that's one. The other one is just keeping your eyes up and making sure you're scanning the horizon the whole time. And there's different ways you walk through different environments. So if you're on the open plain of the savannah, you spread out as much as you can in your group and be a really long, wide line, so that you cover as much area as possible, and it's easier for the animals to spot that there's something going on. And then if you're walking through the bush, you want to walk in a single file line, so that you're all together and you are not kind of like trapped on your own at any point, because that could be also not a good thing. And then the third thing we were looking for was always trying to keep your eye on some kind of escape route. So like finding a tree or a rock or something you can climb or hide behind, because rhinos aren't the best tree climbers. Um, so
Yes.
finding something that you could kind of hide behind, so if anything goes wrong, because they're not like malicious animals, they're not trying to hunt you and eat you or trying to like kill you for fun. It's just they get a bit scared and a bit angry. So if you can take yourself out of danger and show that you're not a threat, then they're all right.
You mentioned the fact that we are quite lucky here in the UK to be able to go out into our outside of COVID-19 and the Corona lockdown, we were quite lucky to have these wild spaces that we can go into quite easily. Climbing tree. Just FYI, if anybody's ever in the States and you come across a bear, don't try and climb a tree because unlike rhinos, bears are really good at climbing trees. So you've got to do some other tactics there. Let me just check if we've got any questions coming in for you, Ben. We haven't got any questions at the moment. If you do have any questions for Ben about wildlife filmmaking, please. We've got a few more minutes with him before we got to let him go. Ben, can you give us a demo? Have you got any equipment with you to show us?
Yes.
And we'll spend like another 2 minutes, very quickly go through some of that. Can you grab some of your kit and show us what you tend to use, or one of the cameras that you use?
Yeah. So when we're out in Kenya, this is one of the cameras that I took out there, which is my 1DX Mark II. So it's a stills camera primarily, but it also does really good video. And on this camera, I've got a really big long lens here, which is a 100 to 400 zoom lens, and then a little extender on as well. So this is the setup that I was using out in Africa. But when we were in the Boma with the rhinos, obviously they were not that far away. So what I ended up doing, I think I've got it over here, was switching to a bit wider, and which I've got here a 24 to 105, which is not the lens I was using out in Africa, because I broke that in India. I dropped it and it smashed into pieces. But
pricey.
Yeah, quite pricey. Yeah. But so I was using something a bit wider like this because I thought to myself, when are you ever going to get the opportunity to get close enough to a rhino that you can fill a frame with a wide lens? And the answer is not very often. So I thought it'd be nice to kind of show a bit more of the environment in the pieces as well. There are two of the pieces. So I was filming James and Patrick and everybody primarily on this, and getting all the pieces of camera on this, and I had a little smaller camera as well that we're using. And then one of my personal favorite pieces of equipment we've got here is my little Mavic Pro drone.
Ooh, fancy.
So we were quite lucky in the fact that when we went to Kenya, they had just said that you're allowed to fly drones in the country. Because before that, I think they were banned. They're still banned throughout a lot of East Africa, like Tanzania and other places. They don't like you flying them. But on the way in, I was pulled. Patrick saunters through the airport nice and easily. He doesn't get. And I was pulled up, and they were like, "What's this?" And I was like, "It's a drone." Immediately thinking that my drone was going to get taken off me and be an expensive confiscation. And then on the way back out, the same thing happened. So we're in Nairobi airport, and I get pulled up, and they say, "What's this?" And I was, "Oh, it's just my drone. I'm sorry." But I think the information hadn't been passed along properly. But as soon as I explained to them, showed me my little rules of Kenya screenshot on my phone, they were okay. Go on.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's something about being able to see and capture places like Kenya and wild landscapes in Africa, not only on your camera but also on drones. That's just quite magical. I've got a question here for you actually, which is here we've got two. Well, we got let's go with Matteo, who wants to know what your next project is going to be, Ben.
Who knows? I think our entire industry is on a bit of a pause at the moment, so I don't know when we're going to resume. The next shoot that I have lined up is in 2021. I'm going to India to assist on a feature film about some wildlife out there, but I'm hoping that some other work comes up before then. I think that there's whisperings that shoots will start going back out in September. It might be a little bit earlier, it might be a little bit later. It depends on how the virus kind of progresses over the next few months. But at the moment, I'm not 100% certain. But I've got a lot of personal projects that I'm working on as well. So we're in the edit phase of a film that I shot with. I know you did a chat with Dan and Neil a few days ago. Yeah. And so we're in the edit phase of a project that I worked with Dan on, and we just got the first draft last night, so we're kind of working through it and trying to finesse things, and it's about the world's most critically endangered eagle called the Philippine eagle, and the story that we kind of found out there and followed that. So that's going to hopefully come out in the next couple of months, and that's what we're working on at the moment. So we're not shooting, but we're editing at the moment.
Fantastic. Ben, I think we have pretty much almost run out of time with you, but could you just give us a little bit of advice for anybody that's interested in becoming an adventure wildlife filmmaker like yourself? You know, some of the kit that you showed us is quite expensive. Yeah. That drone I know is about what, £1,000. That 1DX camera that you had again is probably bodies about what, £1,000 or £2,000 without the lens. So how can young up and coming wildlife filmmakers, boys and girls, get started?
Yeah, so you can, if you have a camera. I started out when I very first started making films on a GoPro, which I saved up. I think it was £350. I saved up from my part-time job that I had, and invested in that. And I made I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 little videos on that. And then progressed up. But you can make a film on anything. So if you've, like my phone, it's got a brilliant 4K camera on it. There's slow motion and time lapse and all this other stuff. So you can make a film on that. Like, a good film is all about the story, and it doesn't really matter what you shoot on if you have a good story. Obviously, if you have some great kit, some £25,000 camera, it's gonna look a lot more beautiful than if it was shot on an iPhone. But don't let that stop you. I think if you want to make a film about the beetle in your back garden, get your phone out, start filming it, and then you slowly build your kit up. So I didn't just invest 20 grand in equipment off the bat. I bought it over 5, 6, 7 years now. And then if you're looking to get into filmmaking, wildlife filmmaking, I think just talk to people about what you want to do and do what you want to do. So actually practicing and making sure you're making films all the time is really important, and then talking to the right people about what you want to be when you grow up is going to really help you, because in the end I think everyone really wants to help each other out in achieving really big ideas and goals and stuff. So if you tell the right person, or they're going to, maybe they have a connection they can give you, or there's some advice or something.
Yeah, I suppose what you're getting at is the sense of community within the wildlife filmmaking industry, but then also with wildlife lovers and nature lovers, not just in the UK but across the world, and it's about sharing that passion with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's not just restricted to wildlife, it's absolutely everything. I've got heaps of friends I made through YouTube who are filmmakers in general, not just wildlife filmmakers. And YouTube's a great place to start building that community up as well. And social media is about being social, so talking to people on it is a great start.
Fantastic. Ben, I think that's all the time that we've got for you at the moment. I like that last line you used there. Get your phone, and if you want to film the beetle in your back garden, just do it. So Ben, I'm going to leave you for now, and thank you so much for taking a few moments out of your time, out of your busy schedule, to speak to us about your time filming real life unicorns.
No worries. Thank you for having me on, Patrick.
Nice one. Good stuff. We'll chat a bit later.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
Cheers. Take care. And that was Ben Harris, ladies and gentlemen. Great guy, wildlife filmmaker, telling us about his experiences filming white rhinos. On our next episode, which is going to be on Wednesday at 11 a.m, we're going to be joined by Emily Cooper. She is absolutely bonkers about bees. So for those of you that are bee fans, we're going to be talking to her. She's going to be giving us her most buzzworthy of bee facts. But until then, I will see you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again on Wednesday at 11 a.m.